You're listening to the Business Brain Food Podcast.
Welcome to the Business Brain Food Podcast, the show business owners listen to when they want to take their business to the next level. Head to businessbrainfood.com.au to catch up on past episodes and access show notes from every episode. Now, here's your host, Ben Futrell.
Well, welcome to the Business Brain Food Podcast. This, my friend, is the podcast that is 100% devoted to taking you and your business to the next level. And the good news is, it doesn't matter whether you're just brand new to this business thing, so maybe you're just scratching that entrepreneurial itch, or maybe you're like myself and you've been in business for a long, long time and you got the scars and the wounds to prove it. No matter what, there's always something new we can do to take our business to the next level. And today we're going to be chatting with Michael Lapps about how to do that, or how he's gone about building his own business. We'll get to Michael very, very shortly. Before we do, I want to let you know that today's podcast is brought to you by maxmyprofit.com.au. The team at Max My Profit help you build the business you imagine. So when you started your business, if you imagined something that was more fun, maybe it made you more money, gave you more freedom, or something that you would enjoy more, so you could enjoy more of your own time, but you end up with something that's a little bit more difficult and ugly to run, maybe something you don't like anymore, maybe you don't like your business, maybe you're finding you're working harder than you should and paying yourself less than you ever imagined. Well, if you imagine something completely different to what you've got, then head over to maxmyprofit.com.au. The team there will help you build the business you imagined. All right, so today's guest, Michael Lapps, is the co-founder and strategy director at Yoghurt Digital. We're going to definitely be asking where that name came from. It's a digital marketing agency specializing in user behaviour research, customer data analysis, and all things search. Welcome to the Business Brain Food Podcast, Michael.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Hey, my absolute pleasure, mate, to have you on board. Now, you're coming to us live from a conference somewhere, so I appreciate you taking the time out and jumping in a quiet corner somewhere. What's the conference about?
It's the Online Retail Summit in Australia. So kind of have the who's who of retailers talking about the latest and greatest in e-commerce, all of the strategies that they're using from a digital perspective to grow their businesses. So it's a really fantastic networking and kind of information download to figure out how we as an agency can continue offering kind of the peak level service that we do for our clients.
Yeah, good on you, mate. Nice to see you're out sharpening the saw, because I think that definitely is a driver for success in many of the entrepreneurs that I talk to. Let's kick off by learning a bit about what ignited the spark in you to start this business.
My dad was very entrepreneurial, so I think it was always within me that I had my own ideas, and I think I struggled to work for other people at times. And I have strong beliefs on how things should be done, and sometimes putting someone like myself in a corporate environment, it's just not a good fit. So when I had the opportunity to kind of go and start my own business, I really jumped on it, because honestly, the worst thing that can happen is that you fail and then you either start again or you move on. You can always find another job.
Is this your first business?
Yeah, it is. So I guess, yes, this is the first business that I've started, but I've kind of been involved in a few other businesses just from like a strategic advisory perspective. I think I'm just really passionate about business and startups in general. But then obviously, through Yoghurt, we also work with a lot of kind of tier one brands as well. So we kind of have quite a big mix, I would say, in terms of our skill sets and the types of companies that we work with.
And what sort of business did your dad have? Is it similar or something completely different?
Like totally different. My dad is not a digital native. So the whole digital marketing concept for him and what a digital marketing agency would do is a very slow education process with him that I've had to kind of take him on that journey over the last 5 years. But yeah, he did all kinds of different things, everything from kind of working in importing, exporting of resources like wood and oil, to real estate, to, just a real, I guess, variety of businesses. And I think that's really interesting to him. That learning about different industries and I guess meeting new people. And I think I have that same passion, that, there's so much of the world to explore and there's so many things that we don't know. And I think business and entrepreneurship gives you a window into all of those different worlds and to really find what you're passionate about and what you're interested in.
So now you've got your own business. Do you sometimes look back on some of the things that happened when you were younger that your dad did, or the way that maybe he was working, and now realise what it's all about? Or was there some aha moment for you there?
I think so. Yeah. I think in many ways, I was kind of almost groomed into entrepreneurship, just seeing the way that my dad works and the way he thinks, and the discussions that we would have around the dinner table were always, I guess, those bigger discussions around what's happening in the world and where the opportunities lie, and have you thought about this and have you thought about that, and how to tackle problems. And so I think it was kind of ingrained in me, probably in a very subconscious way from early on. And it's not so much that he pushed me into entrepreneurship. I made that leap all by myself. It's something that I chose. But I think when you surround yourself with people who think in the same way, you're very likely to kind of follow a certain path. And I look at my friends, and I would say probably 60 to 70% of them have either started a business of their own at some stage or are currently running their own business. So it kind of is maybe less surprising for me that I'm running my own business, because all of the major influences in my life are entrepreneurial. So it's interesting to be able to kind of knowledge share in that way as well.
Have you got any siblings?
I do. I have one sister who's 12 years older than me.
And is she in business?
She is.
Yeah, well, there you go, eh?
So she's actually started 3 or 4 different businesses.
Wow, okay.
Over her time. It's definitely in the blood somewhere.
Yeah, I think it's good for people listening into the podcast. I grew up in a household where my dad had his own, funny enough, importing and exporting business. And, I learned a lot from that, and I think it does rub off on you. I mean, I was trying to start my own sort of entrepreneurial ideas before I even left school. I was trading and selling things. And I think there's a lot. I think for some of us, we can be afraid as parents to talk about business at the dinner table. But I think it can be really healthy, especially if your children need to be, educated as to what the options are. Because school doesn't teach people to start a business, does it?
I was just about to say. I think it's interesting that you say that, because it is a form of education in and of itself, and I think it's a really important education. And you're right. Schools don't teach you how to taxes or how to manage your finances. But the things that you learn in business, those life skills are just, they're phenomenal in terms of the way you can apply them, and what it actually teaches you about life and people and culture. And I think it opens your mind in many ways to things that you wouldn't have otherwise have been exposed to. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty about business. There are no losses. There are only learnings.
Yeah. So how did the idea come about for Yoghurt? Where did that come from?
So I've actually always worked in agencies.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's my experience, that's my knowledge. I always worked in kind of client services and strategy, and that's what I'm really passionate about. I love people, and I love building strategies that I guess drive business growth. So when I had the opportunity to start my own agency with 2 friends of mine, I think it kind of started as just a casual chat saying, this is something that we could do. We have some ideas on what we would want to do differently. And then as we just kind of kept chatting about it, and the idea kind of morphed and grew, and then eventually we just decided, well, what's the downside of actually trying? And thus Yoghurt was born. So it wasn't, I wouldn't say that it was years and years of planning. I think, starting up an agency, unlike a lot of other businesses, doesn't really require a lot of, not that it doesn't require a lot of effort, but in terms of, comparing to an e-commerce business where you need warehousing and you need manufacturing and you need shipping and the cost of building a website, setting up an agency is fairly low barrier to entry, right? You just need a laptop and internet connection, and you're up and at 'em. So, when we decided that we were going to go for it, we just went all in. And I think that, for anyone starting a business, you can't really go do it in halves. You're either in or you're not. And so, we just kind of went all in on the idea, and it's been almost 5 years now.
Wow, well done. That's good to hear. And tell us about the name Yoghurt, because I'm sure you get asked about that a lot. It's an unusual name.
We absolutely do. It is, but as you might imagine, the brand recall is phenomenal. So we called ourselves Yoghurt. The brand story is that when you're actually making yogurt, there's a lot of ingredients that go into that process. But the one ingredient that actually defines yogurt is the yogurt cultures. So without the yogurt cultures and the yogurt bacteria, you don't actually have yogurt. You kind of just have like warm sugar water more than anything else. So we see ourselves quite similarly in the way we work with our clients, in that they have a lot of the ingredients that they need to be successful in digital. But we are the secret ingredient. We are the yogurt culture that brings everything together to make the final product.
Yes, that's a nice. It's good to have a story behind the name. I thought maybe the three of you were sitting around having breakfast, and
just pointed to the nearest breakfast food.
It does happen. I've heard the stories. No, I've done. This is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've chatted to many entrepreneurs. I can tell you some of the ways the names come up is just boggles my mind.
Well, absolutely. You never know when lightning's going to strike, right? So it does definitely come in weird and wonderful ways. But we also knew that we wanted to build a brand. So we wanted to have a brand name, if that makes sense. We didn't want to have the services that we offer as our company name. So when now when we are in the industry and someone says, oh, you should stick to the guys from Yogurt, people know who we are. They know what we do. They know the brands that we work with. So there's a bit of a reputation around that brand. And we actually really quite like that, because people have very positive connotations with the brand name. And I mean, we've worked really hard to make that happen, of course. But I think that had we just had maybe a more boring brand name, that brand recall and recollection would have been very, very different.
Yeah. And even, I think even the font you've used in it gives it that sort of, fun vibe about it too. So I think the brand is so important.
It's a little bit retro.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you talked about the fact that starting up as a digital agency doesn't take a lot of capital. You just need a little bit of talent, or probably a lot of talent to be successful. You guys have got your experience in the digital marketplace of, in working in other agencies. Is there a fear of competition? Like, do you find there's a lot of people that go, you know what, all I need is a laptop and an internet connection. I can jump in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the digital agency landscape is incredibly saturated. There are a lot of people, and I mean, it depends on the services that you offer as well. Like, for example, something like SEO, it's very frequently a race to the bottom on price when you're pitching, because there is always someone who's willing to do it for $500 cheaper or $1,000 cheaper, or they have an offshore team so they can provide it at a cheaper price. But that's not how we operate. I think people know that we are a more premium agency, so the amount of agencies that we would consider direct competition is actually much smaller. The companies, I think, that you are talking about that are just starting up now, they wouldn't be competing for the same clients as us. They will probably be starting when we were 5 years ago. And once, like, the hardest part is building your brand and your reputation. So once that's done, people now know who we are, and that's most of the battle for the agencies that are just starting up. As I said, not going to be competing for the same clients because they don't have the same clout around them right now. And also, if I think about where the digital agency landscape is going over the next couple of years, it's likely that is going to be totally different to what I'm imagining right now. So, we are going to have to constantly evolve as well. So, I think it's going to be a completely different kettle of fish.
So how do you guys go about differentiating yourself from the competitors? Because, I mean, it's easy to say we're a premium brand, but do you have like a guarantee or do you use some sort of unique selling proposition? How do you go about saying, here's how we're different?
Yep. I think the biggest difference for us is that we use a lot of data to drive our decision making. And I mean, a lot of agencies say that they use data as well. That's not necessarily like the only unique selling proposition, but I think our care factor is really in understanding the customers of our customers, right? So we want to understand the behaviors, pain points, motivations, competitor landscape, and user journeys of the consumers who are engaging with the brands that we work with. And then we use that level of insight to then mold our strategies across all channels. I think that's where we differentiate ourselves from a lot of other agencies. We spend a lot of time first trying to understand who the customer is that we are actually building that strategy for. We don't have a cookie cutter, one size fits all approach. We understand that every business is different. They have different goals. You can't just build a strategy to focus on their goals. It also has to tie in with who their customers actually are. What channels are we talking to them on? What messaging are we using? How are we engaging with them? So I think that's where we really differentiate ourselves. We spend a lot more time on understanding the customer than a lot of other agencies would. They usually just kind of want to jump in and get started. And we prefer to go a little bit slower, but then provide a much more effective strategy down the line.
And do you have a way of articulating that to a prospective customer, or are you relying on the fact now that you've got some customers willing to give you that, the testimonial, I guess, and the proof that that's how you work with them?
Look, we've got case studies on our website, and yes, you're right. Our reputation in the industry, people who talk positively about us, can back up the fact that this is our approach and that the approach works. I think the fact that we've grown in the way that we have over the last 5 years and that we work with the types of customers that we do is, that is the proof of the pudding, right? We wouldn't be working with those brands and we wouldn't continue to grow if we weren't, true to our word, because you kind of don't get a second chance at a first impression. If you do really bad work for someone and then that happens again and again and again, eventually your reputation is going to precede you, but in the totally wrong way. So yes, I think we articulate it to some degree on our website, but then also very much in our proposals throughout kind of the sales process. When we talk about our methodology and how we interact with and work with our clients, comes through, and it's why a lot of brands choose to work with us, because they've heard about that methodology and they've engaged with it previously.
Yeah, great stuff. And now, you mentioned before you started this business with with the friends, is that what you say?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, and is the partnership still together? The three of you still working together?
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, it is. So I think in a lot of ways we got really lucky with the partnership because we have three completely different personalities and also three completely different skill sets. So me kind of being the extrovert, I'm the kind of account management, strategy, new business development side.
And hence
Matt
you're
is
here.
very much
you're
on
here?
kind of.
Sorry.
Hence I'm here.
Yes.
And then Matt loves finance and operations. He's very process driven.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ian is more about the tech and innovation side. But then also, Ian kind of leads the UX and conversion optimization user behavior research team. Matt leads the SEO team. So again, we have three completely differing skill sets. And I think that's actually, number one, it meant that we didn't have to hire as rapidly when we first started, because we already had a lot of the skill sets that we needed for the initial growth. I think we didn't really hire anyone even in the first year because we could just keep managing the clients that we had. But I think the strength in our partnership is that we understand each other's strengths and weaknesses, so we know when to push and we know when to pull back. We know how to work with each other, and I think that we're also a pretty understanding bunch. We understand that sometimes you're going to have good days and sometimes you're going to have tough days, and you've got to be there for each other through both.
Yeah, absolutely. And has there ever been a time where you guys have thought, this is not for us, this whole business thing, we're going to go back to getting jobs? Like every now and then I hear a story of people where they hit the wall. Have you had one of those moments?
Yeah, absolutely. I think pretty much anyone who goes into business has a thought at some stage of, man, this is really hard. Like, running a business is not an easy thing. It's not just about acquiring customers or defending your territory against other agencies. You're managing a team. You're focused on growth. You're thinking about innovation and how do we improve things. And there's a challenge that will come up every single day. And there are some days where maybe you've had a particularly long and tough week and you just go, oh man, like, I don't think that I can do another challenge today. But then you realize that this is your business and you walk into the office every day and you go, we built this and I love this. And no one gets into business or stays in business if they don't love that constant challenge. And if you don't love it, then entrepreneurship is definitely not for you, because it is not a cushy ride and you will absolutely be constantly tested. But if you look at the businesses that have succeeded, it's usually a leadership team that is actually quite resilient. And I think grit is a real character trait for a lot of business owners, because you've got to be able to push through a lot of your own doubts, and you tend to be a lot in your own head. And I think that's another reason why our partnership has survived, is that we've been able to lean on each other. When one person is having a down day, you've got someone to kind of pull you out of it. Whereas often I think if you are a sole founder, it can be a really lonely and a really tough journey. And, I've got friends who are sole founders and they've got big teams, but it's different because you're not actually sharing that journey in the same way. You've kind of got all of that stress and responsibility just on your shoulders, and that can be really tough.
So talk to me about the mindset piece, because it's not something a lot of, when if you go into a Google search on 10 tips to grow a business, very rarely will it talk about, making sure you've got the right mindset. Is mindset something that you guys have found is important? How do you rate mindset as a part of the success?
I think it's absolutely one of the most critical components. I think that you can have a fantastic product and you can execute it well, but if you don't have the mindset for growth and you're not willing to constantly work to overcome challenges, and if you get overwhelmed really easily and stressed really easily, and if you can't refocus yourself, you're going to find business tough. Because you might have 3 or 4 really big problems come up at the same time and they all require big solutions. And if you don't have the right mindset coming into work every day of, I'm here to make this business better and this is how I'm going to do it, I think that you are eventually going to hit a wall of some description. And the mindset component is how you get around it. I think most people end up just trying to go through the wall, but mindset will give you strategies of getting over it, around it, under it, however. So it is absolutely one of the most critical components. And, if you read some, stories about, people like Gary Vaynerchuk is probably one of the most commonly used examples of, entrepreneurial success, self-made, does a lot of public speaking and has a huge social media following where he talks a lot about entrepreneurship, and mindset is just one of the most frequent things that he talks about. Your ability to just put your energy and your focus on the right areas every single day.
So, you're talking about the fact that 3 of you work well together because of your different skill sets, but you'd have to have a similar mindset, wouldn't you? You'd have to have that growth mindset. How do you keep each other in check and make sure that you're all aligned and heading in the same direction?
We do meetings every single week. We've got a directors meeting locked in where we sit down and we talk about what's happening in the business and we talk about what changes we want to make and how we're going to grow and what's happening in the team and what's happening with clients. So we have at least once a week a scheduled time for us to sit down, and we usually do it over breakfast, and we'll sit down and we'll just have those types of conversations. I think it's really easy to be constantly working in the business rather than on the business, and we are 100% guilty of that as well. No one's perfect, but I think we constantly try and pull ourselves into check, and we're trying to spend more time working on the business. I think you just have to make time for those types of things.
That's great. Yeah. So you actually put time aside in your diary where you guys say, we're working on the business, here's what we're doing. Yeah. You have to, because you can work in the business forever. Like there is always something else to do, but your responsibility as a business owner is also to be driving the growth of the business, not just to be in the business. You have to be thinking bigger picture and seeing what's happening around you. We absolutely have to put time aside for it, because otherwise it just won't happen. You'll just keep getting pulled into other things, which is fine. Those other things need to get done as well, but you can't deprioritize working on the business, because I think it's a slippery slope. It's a dangerous road to take. Definitely. I think, and that's so many people get stuck working in, they don't work on, and then of course nothing's going to change. So, it's very important that you take that time out to work on the business. Is there what's the one thing you wish you knew when you guys started? Because you started, got your laptops, got your internet, and off you went. You probably get somewhere down the road and went, boy, we missed that. What's that one thing that you wish you knew when you kicked off?
Oh, I don't know if there's just the one thing that I wish that I knew. There's a lot of things that I wish that I knew. I think, entrepreneurship is glorified a lot in the media. We kind of hold really successful entrepreneurs to an incredibly high regard, almost a little bit on a pedestal. Everyone wants to be the next Mark Zuckerberg or Gary Vaynerchuk and just be, a billionaire, tech startup founder, the guys from Atlassian. So everyone thinks that when they start their business, I think it's glorified in a way. Like they think that it's just going to be a really easy ride, and it's, they have the dream in their head of how it's all going to run, but it never, ever, ever works out that way. So I think that I wish that someone had maybe sat me down and had more of a conversation around the realities of entrepreneurship and how hard it's going to be, and for someone to have actually spoken to me about mindset, because I wouldn't say that when we first started the business that I necessarily had the right mindset. I think that I learned it on the go and speaking to other entrepreneurs that I met along the way, and it was a self-education session rather than someone sitting me down and saying, here's, the challenges that you're going to face. And when you face them, here's how you approach it. I think that would have been unbelievably valuable for me. I also think that someone telling you, talking to you about some form of work-life balance, because a lot of entrepreneurs also, they burn out because they stop doing a lot of the other things that give them vitality and energy in life. And if you give up all of those things, I think that it can make the entrepreneurial journey even harder than what it is. And still being able to see people and your family and your friends and talking to them about what you're going through is really important, and not kind of bottling it up. So I wish someone would have given me that information earlier as well, because people do say that entrepreneurship is a lonely journey and that a lot of people don't understand it. But I disagree. I think that there's so many people that you can speak to, other entrepreneurs or people who've been there, done that, or even just your friends who may not fully understand it but still want to support you. I think that would have been really valuable advice for me as well.
Yeah, good answer. I love it. And I think, it is easy. I can relate to what you're saying. We see a lot of younger generation in particular, they see these tech companies get, what seems to be overnight success. I mean, it never is, but it seems to be. And, a lot of people expect that
it's an overnight success that takes 10 years.
You call yourself an entrepreneur and the rest just happens. I mean, and it is glorified. You go to a barbecue, someone says, what do? You say, I've got my own business. And, they look at you with starry eyes. They don't realise that sometimes you're going to bed at night wondering how you're going to get through the week, because your cash flow is not there, or you've got challenges with customers or competitors. Yeah. Yeah, so important.
Yeah, absolutely. It is the most intense emotional roller coaster you will ever go on in your entire life. Often that roller coaster will have like 6 ups and downs in the one day. It's not even over a week or a month. So.
Have you read the book by Darren Hardy, The Entrepreneur Roller Coaster?
I have not.
Oh, well, there you go. I mean, you're referring to it, but that's there is a book called The Entrepreneur Roller Coaster that describes what you're talking about. So that anyone that's listening in, it's a great book to listen to. What is there a book that you've read that's inspired you, that's on your journey?
I think we all read The Lean Startup before we started. We also read Rework. We read The Marketing Agency Blueprint, and then there's like some. Rework was quite brilliant, but the Lean Startup was really interesting, and I would probably recommend that for anyone who wants to get into business. Just kind of talking about getting minimal viable product into the market, and that looking for perfection it doesn't exist in the land of entrepreneurship. It's about speed of execution and your ability to iterate and learn from your mistakes. And I think that book does a really good job of talking about that. And whether you're going into product or agency, but our service is not perfect. We have to work on our service every single day, and we have to keep evolving it because our landscape evolves. The companies that we work with evolve. There's new technologies out there. There's new opportunities and new strategies that we need to be across. So there's no such thing as perfection. And I think a lot of people constantly say, it's not ready, it's not ready, it's not ready. But you might just be better off just putting something into the market and getting some feedback and then growing it from there. Otherwise, you risk someone else getting first mover advantage. Maybe your idea will never get to market because you will always find a reason for it not to be ready, and you will always find something else that needs to be done. But sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and put it out there and see what happens. So it's a great book.
Yeah, it sounds like a great book. We'll make sure there's a link to that in the show notes, gang. So if you missed that, we'll have a link in the show notes for you to be able to go and find that book. The Lean Startup. It is. I've read it myself. It's a great book. What for you guys now, you've said you've been in business for 5 years, and they reckon the stats are that 80% of businesses fail in the first 5 years. So congratulations, number one.
Thank you.
Yeah. Tell us a bit about where the business is now, just roughly, sort of maybe things like revenue, team size, profitability. Markets you're in. What is the difference between startup to where you are now?
Honestly, I think the biggest difference between as you grow your business is where your time goes. So when we started the business, we were very much kind of, it was just the three of us, right? So we just kind of did our own thing essentially. But now we spend a lot of time working with our team. You shift your responsibility to being, from doing the work to working with the team so that they can do the work. And it's a very big change in mindset because you're basically moving to managing people. And I think that's the biggest shift that we've seen as we've grown. We've got a team of 17 people in Sydney. And yeah, going from 3 to 17, it's a lot of different personalities. And, I think that we have a fantastic team and we've hired really well. And we've got personalities that work really well together. But I think that that's a really critical component in that growth stage that, if you don't have the right people on board, that's going to be a real problem.
Yeah.
Like from the outset, or you might have good people, but they can't work together. And then that's equally as big of a problem because you can have all the smartest minds in the world, but if they can't work together to I guess, bring your dream to life, then they're of no use to you. So, going from 3 people to 17 people and getting everyone to work together collaboratively and to, bring all of those personalities in under the one roof has been the biggest shift for us.
Yeah, great stuff. Well done. Now, a lot of people, they think that as you build a business, the money just flows out like it's a money tree, but it's not always the truth. How have you found the growth for you guys handling that? Because you didn't have any capital injection at the beginning, did you? You guys sound like you bootstrapped it with your laptops.
Yeah, we did. We did bootstrap it. And I think, as I said, you can do that with a business like agency. It's harder with other with other industries or other businesses. Like if you're building a tech platform or something else, you have to be able to pay for development. And if you're doing e-com, as I said, you have to be able to pay for things like product and warehousing. So we got lucky in that regard. But I think that we consistently, I'm sorry, I've just gotten inside my own head. I'm trying to think about the best way to answer that question. Many different angles to take. But yeah, I think, the bootstrapping component was really good for us. I felt that was actually quite an experience, not having other people involved in that process, which sometimes when you go and get capital involved, you've got other personalities in the room. And that can be,
and of course,
be tricky in and of itself.
Hidden agendas as well, because you've got to look after the investors. Are you finding now,
100%.
After 5 years, are you still reinvesting your profits in growth, or are you starting to enjoy the benefit, the fruits of your labour, or where are you guys at?
The agency model is quite challenging because it's not. Agency models are not scalable in the way that e-commerce is, or like a SaaS platform would be. Because you're basically buying and selling hours, which means depending on the size of your team, you can handle a certain amount of workload. So agencies are not usually known as, the most profitable of businesses. Your profit margins, depending on the agency, might be between 20 and 40%. I would say as like an average. Whereas, on e-com, you might have, it might be a couple 100% depending on the product that you're selling. So I would say that we spend a lot of time reinvesting into the business. So from a profitability perspective, that's not our focus. Our focus is on consistently developing what it is that we do. And I think we're still only 5 years old, which in terms of like business cycle is quite young. So that's going to be a concern, or like that's going to be an area of focus for us over the next few years. But the first few years, it was just about growth, and we reinvested most of whatever profit we were making straight back into the business.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that, because a lot of people listening, sometimes I think people think the business is something that within a short period of time is going to give you huge returns, and it's not reality. I've built several multi-million-dollar businesses, and it can take some time before you're pulling good money out of a business, because you do need to get the foundations right. You need the team, the systems. I'd say it takes 7-8 years before you can even start thinking about it.
Absolutely. And I think your mindset as an entrepreneur is that you have to be quite selfless in that regard. it's really important to manage your finances, of course, but you need to understand that the business's needs come above your own, and that sometimes you have to go without so that the business can not just survive but thrive. And in the early days, you pretty much just have to do whatever it's going to take to get it to grow. And if you are constantly, I guess, taking money or large sums of money out of the business, I mean, depending on how much money their business really takes off very quickly. But I think the people who consistently reinvest back into their businesses to make it better, it's a long-term game. Entrepreneurship is absolutely a marathon. So I think if you have that mentality, then you're much more likely to win long term.
It is a marathon, that's for sure. What's your favourite part of being an entrepreneur?
I think it's the connections that I've made, honestly, particularly in my role within the agency, because I am, I guess, externally facing in terms of strategy. It's my responsibility to go out and meet other businesses and to try and generate new business. But beyond that, the partnerships that we formed have been amazing. And I've just met incredible human beings from all walks of life. I've learned about businesses that I never even would have thought existed. And just the education that I've received from doing what I do that's my favorite thing. Like, I love people, and I think the people that I've met and learning about all the cool stuff that's happening in the world around me have just given me it invigorates me, I think, more than anything else.
That's awesome, Michael. I think you and the guys are doing a great job, and I'm pretty sure we'll be watching Yoghurt grow through its cultural, what is it, bacteria. I do love the way the name came up. I think that's very, very creative, and which sits nicely with the type of business you are. Now, we're just about out of time. How can people find out more?
You can head over to our website. It's yoghurtdigital.com.au. And you can see more about the team, about the clients that we work with, the services that we offer. And then, of course, you can feel free to get in touch. If you're based in Australia, I guess you can also give us a call on our landline, which is 1300 22 9901.
Fantastic. And thanks again, Michael, for being so open and honest. I know, for some, it's brave to come onto a podcast and tell the world about your journey, because it's not all, champagne and roses. Sometimes there's rough times, and it's great for people to be able to open up and share that with the listeners, because that's the reality of it, right? And it's good that people can tune into something where they get the truth, and that's what this podcast is all about. So I really do appreciate that.
Not a problem, and I think it's fantastic that podcasts exactly like yours exist, because you're right. I think the more that we can share knowledge amongst entrepreneurs, there's plenty of growth available for all of us, and I think the more we share and kind of band together and help each other out, there's no downside. So thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, our pleasure, buddy. Our pleasure, and it's been very inspiring. Now, all we've got left to do is the 60-second scramble, where I ask you some quick questions, you give me some quick answers. Are you ready for that?
Sounds good.
All right, starting the
Let's
clock.
do it.
If you could be any celebrity in the world, who would you be and why?
Oh, that is a fantastic question. Probably Lionel Messi. I would love to be that good at literally anything.
Do you have a hidden talent?
Hidden talent. Sell ice to an Eskimo, I suppose.
That's a good talent to have. It's probably not that hidden, though. What's the strangest thing you've ever eaten?
Strangest thing I've ever eaten? I ate whale meat in Iceland, and I ate camel in Morocco.
Wow, they are quite strange, aren't they? What's your biggest addiction?
Biggest addiction? Probably, I do love a good vodka lime soda.
Perfect. Complete the sentence. If I ran the world?
If I ran the world, I'd like to think it would be a better place.
Perfect. Once again, Michael, thanks so much for joining us for the Business Brain Food podcast. It's been absolutely fabulous. Now, if you've enjoyed today's episode and you want to get access to any of the links that we've spoken about, any books that we've mentioned, or any social media links or website addresses, you can head across to businessbrainfood.com.au. This was episode 219. So that's 219. And there you'll find all the links in the show notes, allowing you to be able to click directly on those links and giving the ability to go straight through without having to worry about writing them down as you listen, because I know some of you are jogging or doing your exercise, and there was a lot of cool things in there that we spoke about, including some book titles and some links for you to be able to go and check out. Episode 219, businessbrainfood.com.au. And today's episode was brought to you by Maximo Profit. Now, the team at Maximo Profit is expanding, and they're looking for people to join their team as business accelerators. Now, Business Accelerator helps a business owner build the business they imagine. So if you're a business coach, business advisor, or business consultant, or you'd like to become one, head across to maximoprofit.com.au, click on the About tab, and learn more about becoming a business accelerator. Maybe you could be the next business accelerator helping a business owner build the business they imagined. maximoprofit.com.au. All right, well, that's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's been absolutely fabulous having Michael on the Business Brain Food podcast. We've learned a lot. Hopefully, I know I did. Hopefully, you've taken a lot out of today's chat with Michael. And if you do want to get some help with your digital marketing and learning more about how to get customers from the online sphere, the stratosphere, call Yoghurt. Fun name. I'm sure they do a great job at helping you generate some leads in a fun way. There you go. So it's been great having you on this week. I've been Ben Futrell. Thanks so much for listening in until the end of the podcast. Until next week, have a profitable day. See ya.